Welcome to the deep dive. We were trying to cut through the noise and get you truly clued in. Today, we're digging into a question we hear a lot. Can a foreigner really buy property in Malaysia in 2025? And the short answer, yeah, absolutely. Malaysia is actually one of Asia's most open markets for foreign buyers. It's quite interesting. It's in this kind of sweet spot. Like, unlike Thailand, you can actually own freehold land outright, not just, condos. And unlike Singapore, you're not facing that, frankly, eye-watering 60% entry tax. But that word really in the question, well, it suggests there's more to it, doesn't it? It implies complexity, maybe some hurdles, definitely some rules you need to know. So our mission here is to give you that solid knowledge. We're going to walk through this together. We'll cover the 5 essential things every foreign buyer needs to get right for 2025. We'll talk the golden rules, the true cost, the purchase process itself, getting a loan, and finally, the market outlook. Think of it as your guide, basically. Clear, straightforward, leaving you ready to go. Okay, let's kick things off with the first big one, the golden rules. These are, well, they're fundamental.
Really need to lock these in. Rule number 1, the minimum price threshold. Now, forget that idea you might have heard about a flat RM1 Million minimum everywhere. That's just not the case. It's more like a patchwork quilt of different rules.
Yeah.
Because each of Malaysia's 13 states actually has the final say on land matters within its borders. So what you find is this really wide range. For instance, KL, Kuala Lumpur, generally around that RM1 Million mark. But go next door to Selangor. It gets much tougher. Jumps to RM2 Million for strata properties like condos in the main zones. And in Selangor, foreigners generally can't buy most landed houses either, or auction properties or agricultural land. Quite restrictive. But then you look at Penang, it's got this complex tiered thing going on. On the island, a landed home might need RM 1.8 million, a condo maybe RM 800,000, but on the mainland part of Penang, those numbers drop quite a bit. Landed maybe RM 750K, condo RM 400K, and then you have states like, say, Sarawak or Perlis, where the thresholds can be as low as RM 500,000. It really varies. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Strategic exceptions.
Yes, like the Medini Special Economic Zone down in Johor, right near Singapore. In Medini, there is no minimum price threshold at all for foreigners. Zero. It's very specific government policy, clearly designed to pull in a lot of foreign investment to that particular spot.
Exactly. And that really highlights something important, doesn't it? It's not just random numbers. It shows this quite sophisticated way Malaysia governs. You have the federal level encouraging investment overall, but then the states act as these crucial gatekeepers. They protect local interests. They shape their own markets. So for you as a buyer, it's not just about finding a house you like. It's about understanding which state's rules and sort of economic aims fit with what you want to achieve. It requires a bit more homework.
Absolutely. Okay, rule number 2, the off-limits list. This is simple enough. No matter how much money you have, some types of property are just completely unavailable to foreigners. Full stop. 3 main categories here. First, Malay Reserved Land, Tanah Reserved Melayu. This is constitutionally protected land purely for ethnic Malay Muslims. Second, low and medium cost housing. That's about ensuring locals can afford homes, a protectionist measure, really. And third, properties that are specifically allocated to Bumiputera interests. These are units within new developments set aside for ethnic Malays and other indigenous groups, often sold at a discount, part of a broader national policy.
Right. Those are hard lines. No negotiating those.
Precisely. Now, rule number 3, and this one's maybe the most critical procedural hurdle. Mandatory state consent. Every single time a foreigner buys property, it needs prior written approval from the state authority, the government of the state where the property sits. This isn't just policy, it's law. It's written right into Section 433B of the National Land Code.
And that's Section 433B. It grants the state what's called absolute discretion. That wording is key. It really cements the state the power. They are the ultimate gatekeeper. It means theoretically they can refuse permission even if you tick every other box. So thinking about the buyer, what does that absolute discretion mean practically for their timeline, their risk?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's why this one step basically dictates your entire purchase timeline. Getting that consent usually takes somewhere between 3 and 6 months, sometimes longer. Your lawyer handles the application, but you just have to wait. It's the biggest unknown in the whole process. So yeah, patience is definitely needed. And doing really thorough checks before you even put an offer in becomes super important. Okay, let's unpack the money side, the costs. Beyond the price on the property listing, what else do you really need to budget for? You've got costs when you buy, costs while you hold it, and costs when you eventually sell. Entry, holding, exit. Let's look at the main entry costs first. Think of maybe 3 main fees. First up, stamp duty on the Memorandum of Transfer, the MOT. For foreigners, this is a straightforward flat 4% of the purchase price. That's set. Second, legal fees for the sale and purchase agreement, the SPA. These are on a regulated scale, but typically land somewhere between 1% and maybe 1.25% of the property value. And third, that state consent levy we just talked about, the fee for getting the state's permission.
This varies a bit by state, but it's often around 2% of the purchase price. And there's usually a minimum payment, maybe RM 20,000. And just a heads up, some states, like Johor, have talked about increasing this fee, so always check the latest. Then you have some smaller entry costs. Stamp duty on your loan agreement. If you get a loan, that's a flat 0.5%. Legal fees for that loan agreement, too, around 1%. Property valuation fee, maybe 0.25 to 0.3%. The good news is the real estate agent's fee is usually covered by the seller, though. Sometimes it can be shared, depending on the state.
Okay, so those are the entry costs. But if we zoom out, thinking long-term, maybe the most important cost for an investor comes when they sell. That's the real property gains tax, or RPGT. It's a tax on the profit you make. And the way the rates are structured, well, it shows a very clear government strategy. If you sell the property within the first 5 years of owning it, you pay a hefty 30% tax on your profit, your chargeable gain. That's punitive. It targets short-term speculators.
Wow, 30%.
Yeah. But if you hold on to that property for more than 5 years, that tax rate plummets down to 10%.
Oh, much more manageable.
Exactly. So the policy message is pretty clear. Malaysia welcomes your investment. The entry costs are predictable. But they really want to discourage quick flipping for profit. They favor long-term commitment to stabilize the market. Makes sense, right?
It does, yeah. A very deliberate structure. And what about just owning the place year to year, the holding costs? These are generally pretty low, actually. You've got annual local council taxes. One's called assessment tax, the other quit rent, relatively small amounts. If you buy a condo or something in a shared development, what they call strata properties, you'll pay monthly maintenance fees and contribute to a sinking fund. That usually works out somewhere between, say, 30 cent and 80 cent per square foot per month, RM 0.30 to RM 0.80. And, if you plan to rent it out and you're not a resident, just remember there's a flat 30% tax on that rental income. Actually, that's the money. Now, what about the actual steps? How does the purchase happen on the ground? We can kind of break it down to 4 main stages for you. Stage 1, you find the property you want, you make an offer, you sign a letter of offer. At this point, you usually pay a small earnest deposit, maybe 2-3%, Stage 2. Pretty quickly, usually within about 14 days, you sign the main contract, the legally binding sale and purchase agreement, or SPA. And at this point, you top up your deposit to the full 10% of the purchase price. Stage 3.
This is the waiting game. Your lawyer submits the application for that state consent. Like we said, this is often the longest part of the whole journey. Could be months. And then finally, stage 4. Once you get that green light, the state consent is granted, and you've arranged the payment for the remaining 90%. You sign the memorandum of transfer, MOT. It gets registered at the land office, and bam, you are officially the legal owner. The keys are yours. So the whole thing, from that first offer to actually holding the keys, typically takes somewhere between 3 months, maybe up to 9 months. And almost all of that variation, it boils down to how fast or slow that state authority gives its consent. Okay, what about getting help to pay for it? Financing. Can you as a foreigner get a mortgage from a Malaysian bank? Yes, definitely. Foreigners can get loans here. The main difference compared to a local Malaysia buyer is the loan-to-value ratio, the LTV. A Malaysian might be able to borrow up to 90% of the property's price. But as a foreigner, you should probably expect to get financing for more like 60% to 70% of the value.
Which means, of course, you need to come up with a larger cash down payment, maybe 30% to 40%.
Right. And this is where some other factors can come into play. Interestingly, having a long-term visa, like the Malaysia My Second Home program, the MM2H, that can actually improve your chances with the banks. It might push your LTV up towards 80%.
Oh, that's a significant difference. Worth knowing.
It really is. When you apply, the banks will ask for the usual stuff.
Okay.
Passport, proof of your income, recent bank statements. And often they'll want a credit report from your home country, too. Standard procedure, mostly. So thinking about that LTV bump, if someone really needs that higher loan amount, should they maybe look into the MM2H program right alongside their property search?
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, if getting the maximum possible loan is important for you, then definitely. Investigating MM2H at the same time as you're looking at properties makes a lot of sense. It could open up better financing options from the get-go. All right, so let's look ahead. What's the market looking like for 2025? What's the general feeling? Well, the overall picture seems to be one of stable, steady growth. Not, crazy boom times, but solid. Projections are generally pointing towards capital appreciation in the property value, going up somewhere between, say, 3% or 7% a year in the main city areas. And rental yields look pretty healthy too, especially in prime spots like the Klang Valley, which includes KL. You're probably looking at 4% to 7% returns from rent. And what's supporting this? Well, there are some big things happening. Major infrastructure projects like the RTS link, that fast train connecting Johor Bahru to Singapore, that's huge. Plus, there's a real boom in high-value investments coming in things like industrial parks, big data centers. That strengthens the whole economy underpinning the property market.